the Pentagon.
In recent days, the U.S. Navy has increased its presence in the area as a result of the current instability in Yemen. We want our partners to know that we're there, and we certainly want any adversaries to understand that we're serious about maintaining maritime security.
There have been concerns that Iranian vessels are heading toward Yemen. Warren would not say publicly whether the U.S. military believes Iranian vessels are heading that direction. A Long Island man has drawn a lengthy prison term in a terrorism case.
26-year-old Marcos Alonzo Zaya of Brentwood, about 60 miles east of New York City, got a 25-year sentence for attempting to join al-Qaeda on the Arabian Peninsula in Yemen. Zaya, who was born in the Philippines, was turned back in London in 2012. He was arrested the following year. He pleaded guilty to avoid a life sentence at trial. Zaya, a clerk in a home improvement store, admitted giving money and advice on avoiding electronic surveillance to another conspirator. His attorney asked for leniency, saying Zaya never intended to fight. The judge said he merited a long sentence as a deterrent to others. Warren Levinson, New York.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is now the first American governor to visit Cuba since the recent warming of relations between that country and the United States. He said he is looking to, quote, help open the door to a new market for New York business. Arkansas is the latest state to pass school choice legislation.
Governor Asa Hutchinson signed House Bill 1552 into law, which provides school vouchers for children with disabilities. It is the state's first school choice program. Additionally, Leslie Heiner of the Friedman Foundation for School Choice says there is another reason to celebrate.
We're very excited about Arkansas being that state that really pushes the country over that halfway mark of states that have some variety of private school choice.
Heiner notes this legislation has strong bipartisan support, with the bill first passing in the Arkansas House on a unanimous vote of 90-0. No funds from the Arkansas Public School Fund and no funds designated for public schools will be used to fund the vouchers. I'm Bob Kellogg.
Cleanup across parts of the country after severe weather Sunday and Monday morning. Bob McKenna is in the Birmingham, Alabama area. He tells WBMA-TV that a storm downed one tree and several utility poles.
Some rain came through, lightning bolt crack, and then bam, 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 all of the transformers just started dropping all around the neighborhood.
Hamburgers made with grass-fed beef and topped with local cheese. That's what could be on the menu soon for University of Utah students. The school is committed to spending more on fresh, locally produced food. University President David Pershing has signed the Real Food Challenge, making a commitment to spend 20% of the school's food budget on so-called real food over the next 5 years. In final news this hour, the makers of an award-winning film about the erosion of American liberties are teaming up with a pro-family group to take a stand for marriage.
With the Supreme Court scheduled to hear arguments soon concerning same-sex marriage, the Family Research Council is calling churches to participate in Stand for Marriage Sunday on April 26th. FRC has also reached out to Ecolite Studios and its president, Jeff Sheets. Sheets explains that FRC wants to use Ecolite's documentary, One Generation Away, as an engagement tool.
Ecolite Studios produced a 7-minute, basically call to action to the church that Family Research Council has reached out to 53,000 churches across the country and challenged them to engage in the Stand for Marriage Sunday. And what that means is they have specific sermon series and talking points. They have specific elements of prayer for the Supreme Court deliberation, and they're showing the 7-minute call to action video.
Sheets says the video will create awareness using the 7 case studies that they highlighted in One Generation Away. I'm Bill Bumpus.
That's all our time for this hour, but you can stay up to speed between newscasts at onenewsnow.com or the One News Now.
100 days, 100 subscribers at $7 will bring FirstAmendmentRadio.com to the minimum level necessary to sustain it through 2015. Go to support.FirstAmendmentRadio.com. $7 a month. Really, you can afford that for our Protestant First Amendment rights and the gospel of the kingdom message. Where your heart is, there will your treasure be also. Go to support.FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Hello, folks. It's Barry Chamish for my next hour. We're staying on theme, and it's a good guest coming up. Is Lieutenant Colonel Sarja Sangari, U.S. Army retired. Here's a little intro. Was born and raised in Iran and is the founder and CEO of the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, as well as the Assyrian Universal Alliance. Oh, that was tough. All right. Lieutenant Colonel, are you there?
I'm here, sir. Just a quick correction. I am the CEO of the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, but not the Universal Alliance.
Okay. Let's stick with, all right, the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. What are you up to?
We started I started the center specifically as an LLC last year. I retired September 1st. I established it on September 11th. That was the day, of course, that our country was attacked and the Western world was attacked by terrorists. And I established it along the 3 lines of effort, which are security, governance, and development. And specifically, currently, we're working off the security lines of effort for the Syrian Christians in the Middle East, specifically in Iraq and also in Syria that are fighting against ISIS.
Okay, these would be the plains of Nineveh, right?
Correct. Now, the Syrian Christian communities in the Nineveh Plains in Iraq are situated, just for your listeners, in northern Iraq, southern Turkey, and where the Mosul Dam and the Mosul city would be. And also the Assyrians in the Khabur River Valley are where they sit basically along the supply lines that feed between Al-Raqqa, which is the capital of ISIL, into Mosul. They are facing annihilation by the forces of the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, and currently, in accordance to the UN sources, we have an estimated 660,000 Assyrians that have been driven from their home by ISIL forces are living as refugees in Iraq, Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, and Iran.
All right, I'm going to add Assyria. It's important because you're referring to them as a Syrian Christian. There was a very powerful empire, way before Islam emerged, were the Assyrians. That's who you're speaking of, that empire.
Correct. The Assyrians are the first empire in the Middle East. They're what we call the Middle East currently. They actually extended throughout the entire region. They're the only empire that actually originated from what we call the Middle East currently. All other empires that came in, the Romans, the Greeks, the Persians, came from the outside within that region of where the Tigris and the Euphrates are. And their ancient capital, of course, the capital city of Nineveh and Ashur, are very significant, and Babylon being another city-state that was under Assyrian empire rule. And they spread all the way down to what is Ethiopia today, empire-wise, and all the way up to where Greece is.
Well, we're not talking about them. I don't think we're talking about them. You're more worried about Iraq, Syria. Look, let's first of all, before we try and, make it, a rousing debate and all this, let's get the definitions. This is you, not me, on the cusp of extinction. Why the double standard? Now, first of all, what's the double standard?
Well, the double standard is, I was asked recently, specifically, that, there's been an Assyrian military on the ground, and they established themselves as of 2014, when initially the Nineveh Plains area where they lived was overrun by ISIS forces. The Kurdish regional government was supposed to be protecting them. Within half hour of saying that everything is okay, the Kurdish forces left in the middle of the night. The Shia, who were supposed to be protecting the Assyrian Christians in that region, took off on 2 C-130s at the same time, and their commanders abandoned the battlefield. The Sunnis who did not join the ISIS ran into the Syrian areas in the suburbs of the Mosul city, and when they got there, they sought refuge in the Syrian homes. But as ISIS expanded its footprint, then the Assyrians who were keeping them safe told them, stay in our houses, we have to leave. The reason I say double standard is, even though all these forces abandoned the battlefield, imagine an American general not fighting for New York or Chicago or California, any of the cities, Los Angeles. And then, those are the forces that are getting funded, supported, getting the military training, and the Syrian Christians who were abandoned on the battlefield are currently fighting in those battlefields, or the most forwardly deployed groups are not getting any of the funding that they asked for.
Now, this is not mildly confusing. Let's go backwards and give definition. Look, when you've got a playing field with 8 different teams, let's start. What are the Peshmerga? And you say America supports the Peshmerga.
Well, the Peshmerga are the Kurdish forces. They belong to the Kurdish regional government. And, of course, the Kurdish regional government established itself in 4 various different provinces, Duhok, Erbil, Sulaymaniyah, and they were trying to expand into Kirkuk, actually. And that has been stopped recently because of the Shia militia who have moved into that region.
We watched this on TV. They ran to a mountain and they held out, and this was on live TV, the Kurds. That's the Peshmerga, right?
Well, no. The Peshmerga is the Kurdish military forces. The individuals that you were speaking about that you saw on TV, those are the Yazidis. And the Yazidis are Kurdish, but the Yazidis are a different ethnical group.
Yeah, this requires a lecture. All right, folks. I think I understand. Peshmerga are the Kurdish forces. The folks on the mountains were not. And we'll keep going. What are the Yazidi?
The Yazidis are an ethnical group. Where they lay their historical lands have been north of the Mosul Dam area. And the only way, I won't be able to describe it, but, basically if your listeners Google search the Mosul Dam, they'll know that the northern areas are where the Yazidis
in short, another name for them, a common name.
Well, that's it. That's their name, Yazidis. That's how they're known. They're very close allies with the Assyrians because they have they're in a similar area, which is in the Nimba Plains, and they have the same aspiration for self-governance within that region.
Oh, gosh. All right, we're going to go on with this. And by the way, it's for a good cause. Don't think I'm boring. This is not a simple issue. All right? Just keep that in mind.
It's not a simple issue. The best way I can describe it, if I may, don't think about it so complicated. Because, look, what I described is basically how America started. America started with individuals coming together. The fabric of America started being sown when individuals came together around their churches, around their worship houses, and established themselves. Those worship houses or those churches were basically led by preachers who had family members who let the congregation build it and grew it. And as these various different churches established themselves, they basically established their terrain. And as they established
their terrain... You say
they're
Christian? The Yazidis are Christian?
Yes, Yazidis have
and
Christian
yet,
first faith.
America... Okay, bear with me, okay? If it's tough for me, I assume it's not easy for everyone, okay? So America supports the Yazidis, but not the Assyrian Christians of the Nineveh Plain, and now we've got an issue I'm not even sure I've ever heard of before.
Correct, and the reason they do it because Yazidis are ethnically Kurdish. They're not Assyrian. And Assyrians are Christian Assyrians that
they're
belong
Kurdish Christians. Boy, this
Correct.
is just a great whirlpool of a war, isn't it? All right, away we go.
Well, I mean, we haven't brought China or Japan into it, but we can talk about that later. But from a basic footprint, just so you know what the Assyrian military has been doing on the ground since August 2014, like I said, they were fighting in Syria and Iraq under Assyrian command and control and the Assyrian flag. Their forces did achieve unity of command and unity of effort. Those are the terms we use in the military, of course. And they were recognized by coalition forces as a vital partner that were fighting against ISIS and ISIL. What happened
All right,
in October,
that's a next topic. We're going to get there, I promise. All right? But if we go there too soon and we forget that the Yazidis are actually Kurdish Christians, we can get really lost. By the way, you did forget one America. America also supports the Shiites fighting ISIS, the Iranians. You left that one out.
Yes, they are. I mean, we provided targeting for them to take the city of Tikrit, and the individuals who initially moved in there were all Border Corps commanders on the ground, the ones that, when I was downrange, were fighting against. So, we provided targeting support for the Shia militia to get in and take Tikrit, and currently those same commanders and forces for the Shia are sitting on the oil fields in Kirkuk. With them taking those oil fields in Kirkuk, that pretty much limited the footprint of the Kurdish regional government to be able to have access to those oil fields. Either they're going to have to negotiate for them or they would have to fight the Shia for those oil fields.
But overall, you're seeing logic in this. All right. Pardon me, but this looks like chaos. But neither here nor there, you ask, are Assyrian Christian women and children fit only to be sex slaves and decapitated? That's a pretty good question. I would answer, of course, it's rhetorical, no. But you have a different answer. What does that statement mean?
Well, it's a statement because, of course, the celebration, as they say, or the recognition of the first genocide of the 20th century, which was against the Armenians, Assyrians, and the Greeks, took place in 1915. The 24th of this April is when that recognition takes place. The Assyrians lost 750,000 people that were massacred.
Wait, not the Armenians? You're saying these were not Armenians?
Oh, no, the Armenians lost 1 million plus.
They lost more than that, actually. But you're saying there's another 750,000 in the equation?
Correct. The Assyrians were 750,000, and because they laid along the Hikari mountain ranges within Turkey. And they also were massacred in northwest Iran at that time during World War I. Now, as they lost those individuals, currently we have 660,000 UN estimates that are refugees. But just as of a few hours ago, when I posted it on my site, the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement,
You'll plug that in 2 seconds. I just want to get this point first. This, to me, is history rewritten. Now, look, when it comes to the Armenians, despite the Turkish denial, everyone knows, I think the figure is closer to 1.5 million were massacred. But correct. Assyrians, these are Christians?
Correct. The Assyrians at that time were massacred. The only reason you didn't really hear about the Assyrian massacres was because where the Assyrians were being massacred, there was not so much of a footprint from the U.S. at that time in those regions. I will tell you that the U.S. ambassador in 1915 literally had to pressure the Egyptian ambassador to find out what was happening in the Ottoman Turkey area. The Assyrians of that time were known as the smallest ally. They were fighting on behalf of the British within the region against the Ottomans.
From what country? From what country?
They were actually the Assyrians. That was their historical homeland. The reality was that the Ottomans had taken hold of all these historical homelands and established the Ottoman Empire over the Assyrian territories in the Hikari Mountains. So the Assyrians fought
this
against...
isn't good. It sounds like a legitimate war target if they were backing the Allies, the British. It's not exactly the same as genocide against innocent people.
Well, no, I mean, the only reason they backed them because they got attacked just like the Armenians. Remember, there was a policy by the Ottomans to get rid of everybody, to include the Armenians, any Christians, Armenians, Greeks that were Christians, and Assyrians that were Christians. So it was a legitimate attack against all of them.
Well, a little perspective. The Balkans had removed themselves from the Ottoman Empire, and they were really on Turkey's doorstep. If you're saying that they had, again, I'm not justifying, this isn't me, all right? But if you're saying the British armed the Assyrians, it's different.
No, the British didn't arm the Assyrians. The Assyrians got attacked. The Assyrians had arms. People in the mountains had arms. When the Assyrians got attacked and the head of the Assyrian church, his brother, was captured by the Turks and were put in a position and he was executed, you have to fight. You got to get your arms from somewhere. Where are you going to get it? The British were on the ground at that time. The British were able to provide some support, and they received that support. The Russians were also fighting in that area. So, I mean, you got to get your weapons from somewhere. You don't just sit there and get your head chopped off and say, now I can justify genocide. You have to fight against your
Well,
enemies.
the Armenians really were taken from their homes, marched down roads, and massacred anyone who could get near them. But, okay, this is a separate issue. I won't dive into it.
Every Assyrian woman was killed. Their children were decapitated. My own great aunt that I had gave birth while she was escaping from the enemy, and they killed her while her child was being born to her. You cannot consider that a justified armed conflict. That is a genocide of the war.
I don't justify anything. Look, don't get me wrong here, all right? I don't justify any murder, none. But all I'm saying is the Armenians really were not. Okay, there were a few in the Russian army. Okay, there were a few. And that got the Turks really ticked that they were fighting for the Russians who were attacking the Ottomans. It was very messy. But I don't justify it. My goodness.
The Armenians and the Assyrians lived in the same neighborhoods where the Armenians were taken out and killed. So the Assyrians that lived in the same neighborhoods where the Armenians were, they were also killed. The only reason was that it's not looked at as being an Assyrian genocide because the Assyrians really never pushed it as an issue. They brought it up in the League of Nations, the areas where the Assyrians were being massacred. There was not that much information. Now, I will tell you, the majority of the sacking against Assyrian villages at that time were done by the Kurds, who were executing on behalf of the Turks. Region. And that's the reason why the League of Nations never gave the Kurds actually a homeland. The Armenians received a country afterwards. The Assyrians never received any physical entity for them to protect themselves.
Oh, they left countries that should never have been established. Look, Iraq has got this delightful mixture of Sunnis, Shiites, and Kurds all in the same plate. You know, if you want to guarantee a war, just make a country like that. Forget it. I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to you again. I'm expressing opinions and I shouldn't. All right.
It's good to express the opinion. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. We started the AssyrianAppeal.org, which is a site that we get money to give specifically to the Assyrian multi-families currently that need that support so we can fight against ISIL, for the young men and women to fight against ISIL. And I will tell you, I've had people go into the site and say, well, we're tired of giving money to illegal aliens. So there's really a misunderstanding of who the Assyrians are, what their history is, what their traditions are, what they have gone through. And the reality is, as of just a few hours ago, the President of the United States made a statement through his spokespersons to the Armenian delegation that on the 24th, he's not going to even recognize the Armenian genocide. And at the same time, the UN lead, in this case, did not agree with the Pope. And Ban Ki-moon said that he doesn't consider the slaughter of the Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks as being a genocide. So 100 years removed from that, because of political decisions, people are playing schematics with what is a genocide, what is a war crime, and is leading to another eradication of the Syrian Christians in the name of Syria.
I'm glad we brought this up. It's not, in my opinion, even an issue for debate. Above the people were leaders who, I'm not going into this. When we come back, we'll go into us. Look, I have a punchline. I gave it to my last guest. You are determined to get America back into the Middle East, and this, you have a motive. You want a Syrian Christian. You want them to fight ISIS. And this we can have a lively discussion about, okay?
Well, they are fighting ISIS. If they don't, they're going to die. So either you fight or you die. You have no choice. So either way, either we support their efforts to be able to defend themselves, or we say die. That's it. That's the only choices they have. There's no other choice. There's no other choice. Sir.
You want this army.
There's no
you
other
want
choice.
the Americans back there arming and training this new state. By the way, where are they the majority that they can put a state down?
They're not asking for a state. They're asking for $5 million for likely armed weapons so they could protect their villages. If you cannot come up with
you add more than that. You want to save a Syrian Christian from ISIS, and you want America to bring governance. That's what you wrote to their historical homelands.
No, they have asked for self-governance in their own historical homelands. Now, if you don't want to give them that, you don't have to give. You don't have to give them.
Means puppet governance. Look, I've got lots of questions, and don't get me wrong, we're on the same side. These are legitimate questions, okay? Look, what you're saying, I'm going to quote before. When we come back, we'll both plug each other. And actually, I do want you to read my book, at least one of them, Who Murdered Yitzhak Rabin. The Middle East sucks, and don't think there's a democracy and freedom and everything in Israel. We're getting sucked into it just like the Assyrian Christians. And we may not come out of this. All right? And that's me. But, all right, I'm going to quote you now. You deal of America. You are the one American, according to this quote, that knows the score. You deal with the Assyrian Christian genocides unfolding in Iraq and Syria by establishing an enduring partnership with Assyria and by arming and training the Christian-led army to defend their ancient homelands against ISIS. That's not a small agenda you just said there.
Well, I don't know where that quote came from. I'd be honest. Was that sent to you by a PR guy, or was that
probably? Look, we have to take 3 minutes off. If it's not yours, I'm confused because I arranged all my questions around what I got. But nonetheless, take 3 minutes for commercials. My guest is Lieutenant Colonel Sergeant Sangari, and I may be having bad quotes. I don't know. We'll find out in 3 minutes. Wow.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. you will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on Internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the Internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
Hey folks, it's Barry Chamish with a very good guest, and let me plug myself first. All my books are at lulu.com. That's Sorry, I got a cough drop in this. There. www.lulu.com. Look in the search box and spell my name, Chamish. Chamish. For this subject, I think you should get my last book, The Stinger, Not the Stung. David Samarin is keeping up my website. It's www.barrychamish.com. And please, Lieutenant Colonel, plug yourself.
I started, like I said, the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. We're helping the Southern Christians on range along the security lines of effort. And, I would ask your listeners to go in, take a look at our Near East Center for Strategic Engagement.com, or even on our Facebook.
Oh, that was fast. I'm going to ask you to spell that letter by letter so people can actually get there.
No, thank you, sir. It's www.nec-se.com. So www.nec-se.com. And also you can go to our Facebook and find us. We use it as a blog. We take a look at link analysis of what is happening in the region, specifically throughout the entire region of the Near East, and try to provide some open source link analysis so people can understand the economic and the ideological battles that are taking place in the region. We also started the UnitedAssyrianAppeal.org, and it took us 6 months to get there as of last month, but we started it in order to be able to raise money that goes directly to the Assyrian military families whose loved ones are fighting against Iraq.
People, We are archived for a week, libertyarchives.com, and you'll hear the web information just by going to hour 2 of my show. All right. Now, I'm going to take the quote. Honest, it says about you, and it says, with timely support in the areas of security, governance, and development, the Assyrian people will not only be able to halt and push back the threat of ISIS, but also establish a political presence in Iraq and, of course, its vast resources. I assume you mean oil. That's you, no?
Yes, sir. Now, that's off the website. That's correct. Now, it's not calling for a state specifically. It's saying self-governance. And the reason we look at it from a self-governance perspective, I was asked recently, why you advocate self-governance for the Assyrians? And I said the question should be, why not? Why shouldn't the Assyrians be able to govern and defend themselves in their historical homelands where they had been living there since 6,000 years? The U.S. advocates self-determination for the Kurds. They do it for the Sunnis. They do it for the Shiites living in the Assyrian towns and villages of the Assyrian homeland. They provide them, and continue to provide them financial aid, material, military support to these groups to achieve their objectives. And then the question was, I asked, why not for the
army? It means arming the Assyrians. Governance, that means a puppet government, American puppet government. It's not a great formula. That's my opinion. But you think it will strengthen their hold again with American. Why American? In short, you want American boys back in Iraq to give the Assyrians a homeland, right?
No, they're not asking for the boys to come back to Iraq. The boys are already in Iraq. My friends are in Iraq. They're in the army. They're fighting there, the ones that are there with the Special Operational Forces. The Assyrians have asked for $5 million, which is not that much of a payment, in order to put 10,000, boots on the ground to fight. That's it. If you cannot support that, then you get to ask the question, why? Why can't you support it? But you spend billions of dollars on partners that have not come to fruition to support you. And it's not an inject by the U.S. Assyrians took hold of their own destiny when the Kurds left their areas, when the Shia loaded up C-130s. The commanders abandoned the battlefield when the Sunnis decided to join either ISIS or not fight. The reality was they started with their guys, picked up weapons and started fighting. Now, how is that an inject from the United States if these guys get support? When the United States had asked the communities in Iraq, put down your weapons and become a unified Iraq, the Assyrians within less than 24 hours, all their militias going back to 2003 supported that endeavor. The Kurds held elections to become a separate state and armed themselves. The Shia turned around to Iran and requested more arms. The Sunnis started killing our soldiers on the battlefield. So the Assyrians gave an opportunity to become a whole as Iraq. None of the other characters wanted to stay as a whole. The Assyrians supported the U.S. effort and interest in the region. Nobody else did. When the Assyrians were told you have to subjugate yourself to the Kurdish or to the Shia or the Sunni in your own historical land, they're the ones who have to provide you financial support, development support, military support, police support. They did so. And when ISIS attacked, they all left them, and they never provided them any weapons, any development, any support. So the Assyrians have said, we showed you through our actions that we can be an enduring partner to you, and we showed you that we're loyal to the fight here for your wants and desires in the region. So explain to us, why are you supporting everybody else's self-determination within their region, and why are we not supporting self-determination for the Assyrians in the region, which is going to establish a democracy in the Middle East and will be a staunch ally of America and help to advance U.S. interests within the region.
But yet you write, and again, this is you, if you back this, Don't wait for Washington to return your calls because they won't. So what do you suggest? If you're not going to get your calls back, what's next?
Well, that is, as they say, what you have there is specifically Washington, D.C. is not going to call you individually and say we agree with you or we don't. I have said from the beginning, if you're going to do anything, go back to your congressman. If you get to your congressman and you talk to your congressman at the local level, that's why we're starting this at the grassroots level. That's why we, come on your radio show and make sure that people understand what's happening within the region. And, thank you for giving us the voice.
My pleasure. But I'm still going to debate you. I have a punchline that I'll wait to the end before you hear. All right. Look, what you also write. By the way, I'm not thrilled with your answer. Talk to your congressman. You really think that'll work?
No, just like you said that, that's why I say they won't return your call. I wanted to emphasize that point. You just agreed with the point I was trying to make. So that's why what I'm trying to say is they're not going to call you. When you call them, they're not going to call you back. So what we have asked for, if possible, is to be able to just get the word out as to what's happening to the Christian Assyrians on the ground. At the minimum, if you could, at least pray for them so their lives would be saved. And at the max, if you could, try to support us by becoming a vocal voice within your community to point out what is happening to them. If there's somebody out there who's willing to listen, if there's somebody in your political arena who's willing to understand, then we'll be happy to sit down and show them exactly what's happening within the region.
I assure you, you have people listening. All righty, don't worry about that. I have a smart audience. But I'm going to quote you some more. This worries me, the next quote. It's again from you. ISIS is hell-bent on exterminating Assyrian Christians to disprove the Bible and rally more to join ISIS. What you're saying is, are you selling this as some sort of prophetic war?
Well, the best column you could find if you go to nec-sc.com was a column that came out of Atlantic, and I have it posted in our website about how ISIS thinks. Hashtags are not going to save or pound ISIS into the ground. It has to be fighting on the ground. There are certain elements within ISIS. There's few lines in the Bible that Isaiah had put together, and those specifically refer to the Assyrians. For those prophecies to come true, Assyrians and an Assyrian state has to exist. Now, because Isaiah is a main figure in prophecy when it comes to Jesus Christ, these so-called ISIS elements believe if they eradicate and kill the Assyrians, then they can prove that the Bible is a lie, because now they have proved that a prophecy is a lie. And that's why they're taking a fight in the way they are to the Assyrian Christians, not by just killing them, but also by attacking their cities, their ancient artifacts. Now, if you go to Europe and you destroy the statue of David, you're destroying the statue of David. But a lot of people don't understand. When you destroy an Assyrian winged bull that is sitting in one of the historical lands of the Assyrians, those statues all have writing, history on them. History of the time going back to 6,000 years ago. They have science written on them. They have language written on them. By destroying those, they're destroying more than just a statue. They're destroying the entire history, eradicating it of a people.
We're aware of that, by the way, that a lot of history is now rubble. I suppose that's part of a war against what came before. Nonetheless, are you saying it's mostly Assyrian Christians whose monuments are being, destroyed by ISIS?
Monuments. They belong to the ancient Assyrians, correct. Now, the other piece to it is, you got to understand, Assyrians speak Aramaic. That's the language Jesus Christ
Oh, really?
used. preach, correct?
No, that was the language. It's very close to Hebrew.
Yes. Now, in Islam, the Arabic is a language of the Quran. Hebrew is a language of the Torah. Aramaic is a language of Jesus Christ. That's what he used to preach his religion, his philosophy.
It was the common language of it. Hebrew had degraded itself to being the language of the temple, and the common day-to-day language was Aramaic, which, by the way, is Hebrew written and very close.
Well, because my language started, and I don't want to get in a language discussion here. Hebrew comes out of basically what Phoenicians used, which came out of the Ur, which is really close to the A, because Assyrian is Akkadian spoken, Assyrian written. If ISIS elements kill the Assyrians, that means they kill that language. Why is that significant? As an example, I have a friend of mine, his name is Thomas. I said, do you know what your name means? He goes, yes, I was named after one of the apostles. I go, yes, but what does Thomas mean? He couldn't tell. I said, do you know Thomas in Aramaic means Tuma? Tuma means it doesn't have a beginning or an end. I said, now, if you don't know Aramaic, you don't know what Tuma means or what Thomas means. You have just eradicated the history of what the significance of that name is, and while it affects the theology of your religion.
But again, in Hebrew, the word is tom. It means the end. They are very, very similar, all right?
Correct. So what I'm saying is there's an ideology that exists in ISIS. ISIS is trying to eradicate the Assyrians.
Actually, Tom is the beginning. Tom Sefer is the beginning of the book. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry. I'm interrupting.
No, that's okay. It's your show. You can interrupt.
No. You're a very respected guest. All right. What you're saying, in short, is the Aramaic speaking. Now, you want... Well, what you're saying is that you want America to legally back this state. And by the way, you write you do not want the UN to step in for the Syrian Christians. You want the Americans there. These are your points.
Where's the UN point written? Yeah, where's the UN point written?
Why wait for the UN to step in? It invites annihilation of the Assyrian Christians. Point 3.
Yes, because the UN is not going to step in. They're not even recognizing the genocide from 100 years ago for the Armenians, which you so articulately stated that was more than 1.3 million dead. If they're not going to recognize the Armenian genocide, and this is the UN, do you think they're going to go in and help the Syrians that are currently 660,000 refugees?
Actually, I think they're impotent. I've seen them patrol Israel. They're impotent. No one respects them.
Well, they're not going to do it. They just not structured that way, force-wise. I will tell you, 4 days ago, the village of Bakufa was attacked. This is where you have Assyrian fighters in it. 120-millimeter rounds land on their heads, 17 rounds of 120. I've been downrange. When you put a 120 rounds on somebody's head, trust me, it's a very significant emotional moment. After they were pounded into the ground, ISIS maneuvered on them as they were being pounded. Prior to them being pounded, ISIS sent a small drone over their heads to find out and scope where their locations are. When the enemy, 17 individuals of ISIS, attacked the Assyrians, finally Assyrians were able to withstand the pounding of these 120 millimeters, fought against the ISIS forces. 5 of those 17 had suicide vests on. 2 detonated, 2 others were killed by the Assyrians. The Mali, which is the vests that ISIS forces were using to attack, are the same Mali that I was wearing, which I was using to defend myself when I was downrange fighting against the bad guys. And Mali is basically the body armor. And those body armors are mostly U.S. Purchased body armors that exist. When the Assyrians took those weapons from the dead to try to use it to, be able to defend themselves. The Kurdish Peshmerga showed up, picked up those weapons for their own forces. So the Syrian fighters on the ground can't even pick up weapons anymore to fight against the enemy. That is just absolutely a joke. And if anybody says don't arm or support the Syrians to defend themselves, then you own it. You could do it. It's your choice. But don't tell me that you respect human life and you respect the sanctity of individuals to be able to defend themselves. Because
well,
you're
I can
not.
certainly hear the emotion in your voice, and I'm going to add your writing now that Assyrian self-governance is the answer for a command friendly to the West. Your words.
Correct, and it is their answer because guess what? They're giving an opportunity for everybody else to lead them, and they have failed to do so. The Kurdish regional government cannot protect the U.S. consulate that is sitting in the KRG-held area, which was attacked a few days ago. So how are they going to protect those Syrians? We're not even giving them weapons that are found on the battlefield. How are they going to protect them when they're not even in their area taking the pounding that they're taking and the shelling? Here's the bottom line. The United States has a choice. They could either support the Syrians and be able to give them at least arms to protect themselves, or they don't have to. That's their choice. But the reality is, if they do that in that Nimbus plain, which we're talking about, 30-mile squared, we cannot defend a Syrian Christian enclave 30 miles squared by giving it $5 million, allowing 10,000 people on their own on the battlefield to fight against the bad guys. That means you alleviate the U.S. footprint. You don't have to fight those fights. It takes one SF-3 team of 12 people to train 5,000 soldiers. So it's not going to be that much of a significant team to be able to train, 10,000 fighters. It's one team.
Stirring the soup again. Look, I'm going to again quote you. You've got a couple of more issues. I may or may not leave you with my fears and trepidations, all right? I may or may not. But your words, well, what awaits Europe, America, and the rest of the civilized world if we fail to destroy ISIS in the Nineveh plains? All right, what awaits us?
Well, you just turn on your news. How many people you had to pick up in Minnesota? Last week, you had one arrest.
I think it was 4 and 2 in California.
Correct. And a week prior to that, you had, in 10 days, you had 8 arrests. Those are not likely to go away. With the increase of ISIS being able to now conduct attacks in Yemen, conduct attacks, as you just recently saw, in other regions around the Mediterranean, to include Mali. Al-Qaeda and ISIL are even in Mali currently, and they have started conducting attacks in Afghanistan. This footprint is growing. These are the same guys who declared war on Japan. Japan, under Article 9, cannot even inject forces on a battlefield. So here's a group that declares wars against them, attacks their oil platforms, and beheads 2 of their journalists. These individuals
that's the
are
worst-case disaster. I assume there is no best case.
Look, the people of the Middle East can't control their areas. The problem is, because you get economic fights with the juggernauts taking place, and you have the ideological fights taking place, it's not going to resolve itself. Look, in Christian religion, we have the Pope and we have the Vatican. Whether you're from whatever religious denomination, when the Pope speaks, people generally say, okay, he's speaking on behalf of Christianity. When the Vatican publishes something, they say that the Vatican has published something on behalf of Christianity. That doesn't exist in Islam. Saudi Arabia is trying to be the lead of all the Sunnis. Iran trying to be the leader of the Shia. Egypt is trying to be the leader of all the Arab nations in the region. And Turkey is trying to establish its own regional hegemony, going back to what the old Ottomans were, and they were a caliphate at that time. Because there's not one unifying voice for Islam, what happens, they're all killing each other to be able to establish that one unifying voice, to be the country or the nation that's going to be providing that voice. There's 4 different schools within Islam, but none of those schools are unified. That
you're
is the
describing
problem.
a terrific formula for a slam-bang world war. I'm not even sure there... Look, I have that's manipulated. All of this stuff is manipulated. And, well, neither here nor there. Your next question, what China has to do with what's happening in Iraq, as near as I can figure, nothing. What have you got in this?
That was a point I was asked earlier. Look, when I was asked originally, I was the first one to say the whole nuclear agreement between Iran and the U.S. has more to do with China and his economic needs within the region than had to do with anything else. The reality is, part of what is happening also in the region, like I said, that ideological fight taking place. Here's where the economic fight is. European community itself economically is weak. The United States has a weak economy, whether we want to admit it or not, or the politicians want to admit it or not. Our economy is really tied to China. As of last year, July, China bought most of our securities. When they purchased those on the short term, the worry was that they may dump them on the market and affect our economy negatively. China needs the Middle East because that's where it gets its oil and that's where it gets its gas. Under the sanctions that were placed on Iran, China was expecting for a 160-inch pipeline that was initially built from Iran through Pakistan to complete its footprint into China to stabilize its energy needs. The sanctions were not allowing that to happen. China was really pushing the United States hard on that issue, especially after it bought our securities, putting us in a bind that we have to try to come up with a negotiation. So most people are looking at it saying, well, there's a negotiation based on the fact that Iran's not going to get a nuclear weapon. But that specifics had a lot to do with it. Iran wanting to play China after the nuclear deal against the United States stated that you need to lift all the sanctions, knowing it was going to be putting pressure also at the same time on China and also on the United States. That's why Japan stepped in and purchased most of our securities in February. And currently, Japan Prime Minister is going to be here, Abe, in the United States on the 29th to address a future partnership for why Asia is important. This is a global war. There's a reason Iran's fighting in Baluchistan. There's a reason why China's selling submarines capable of missile launches.
Oh, I'm sorry. That buzz. Look, I'm not going to get at my punch line. Listen to the first hour, please. You'll find it very relevant. And with 30 seconds, tell people how to get a hold of you.
Go to the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement Facebook and site and do us a favor. The Christian Assyrians are not getting the support they need, so we would ask you to go to the UnitedAssyrianAppeal.org and donate whatever you can to help us give money to their families are fighting down.
Terrific. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. We enjoyed it very much. This is Barry Chamish. I'll see you next Tuesday. I hope you like the show. Night all.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you for lively debate.
And thank you.
If you'd like to get a copy of this program, you may subscribe at FirstAmendmentRadio.com for only $45 a month, and you'll receive an MP3 CD weekly of all of our programs. As a bonus, we'll send you a password for our audio archives online. That's a $15 value. Or you may request any month of any program on one MP3 CD for a minimum donation of only $25, or any single program on tape, MP3 CD, or CD for only $15. You may do all of this online at FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Just follow the instructions to make a donation or subscribe. You may also adopt an hour of your favorite program. Please don't forget that most of the programs on FirstAmendmentRadio.com are listener-supported. Don't do Internet? Then call 559-781-3773 and we'll be honored to help you. Thank you from all of us here at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
I pledge allegiance to the King of Kings and to his kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. One holy nation under our Heavenly Father, grace, mercy, justice for all.
American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. The U.S. is sending the aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt to Yemen. Colonel Steve Warren